Hello, listeners. Welcome back to Catholic Narc Recovery, where we're jumping into another topic on narcissism. And today we're going to be addressing the question, what is narcissistic personality disorder? And there's nobody better than Dr. Jameson Natwick to join us to explain this topic. And Jameson, why don't you just tell the audience a little bit about your background before we jump into this question?
Yes, I have a master's and PhD in marriage and family therapy. I currently am a professor at Seattle University where I teach the psychopathology course. So that is the course for training therapists where they learn about all of the mental disorders that are within the manual. And part of that is the personality disorders, which narcissistic personality disorders falls under. So once a year, I'm going through and informing students of what this disorder is, how to assess for it, questions like what are you going to be looking for in the therapy room during assessments as you are meeting with clients.
Well, I'm glad we're speaking with you. You're the perfect person to answer this question. I don't know about you, but I hear narcissism thrown out left, right, and center in today's culture. Everyone's like, oh, they're a narcissist, they're a narcissist. Can you
Yes.
unpack this for us? What's the difference between someone who's narcissistic or someone who has narcissistic personality disorder? What's the
Yeah,
difference?
well, we have seen an uptick in the acceptance of mental health and mental health treatment and taking care of our mental health. But one of the, I would say, negative side effects of that is there's language that is in the psychological and mental health world that has been kind of usurped by the culture in our society and just kind of thrown around. So I've had couples come in and they will talk about how like my husband is a narcissist because he like all he wants to do is his hobbies, or he wants to go to his mother's house for Christmas and not my mother's. And as I was working with this couple, it's not narcissism because to a certain degree, we all need to advocate for ourselves and put ourselves and to voice our desires. Like this is what I want in life, or I have a passion here, and part of relationships, marriage, family life is working together and realizing that we have different perspectives, needs, wants, desires, and we need to work together. Narcissistic personality disorder doesn't want to work together with another person. And I think that's something very key if you're looking at a relationship is it's okay for a person to disagree with you, to voice their desires, to really maybe go after it, and like also want to be admired by you. Like I think in a marriage, like having your spouse look up, like be like, "I'm so glad I'm with you. I admire you. Like I see all the good things you're doing." Like that's a good feeling. I think that's a good human desire also. But what we have to realize is narcissistic personality disorder is a very clear. There are 9 criteria for it. And before we got on this podcast, Veronica said it's cranked up. It is like an 11 out of 10. This is not someone who is every once in a while goes through a mood. This is a personality disorder, is there 100% of the time. It is always active. And sometimes they can hide it, or when they know they need to, maybe manipulate someone. But it's still active. They know that they need to manipulate. They are working it. So it's ingrained in their personality. So what that means is that and how the DSM, so the DSM is the Diagnostic Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders, which is what psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, social workers all use to diagnose mental disorders. So what personality disorder is basically the personality has developed a pathological dynamic within it, that it is going to take on characteristics, relational patterns, and behaviors that are going to cause dysfunction and distress in an individual's life or the lives around them. So there are 9 criteria that I'm going to go through real briefly. So, and
Perfect.
please pause me if you want me to expand. So, meet the criteria, you need to have 5 of them. And for most of the time, like you're not going to have someone who has all 9. you're going to have someone who has 5 or 6 because that's where the personality is going to be around, but they need to meet this criteria. So the first one is grandiosity with expectations of superior treatment. So a great example I had is I once had a person come to me and they're like, I was told by my priest that I needed therapy. And I found you because you're a doctor and I need to have the best treatment. I need a doctor to help me. So there's this sense of like, though even with treatment, they can't have someone who is just the master's level, even if that person was way better. Like they like status and like the way they approach things. It's like, well, I can't just have any doctor. I now am gonna go to this premier place and spend out so much money just to make sure that I get the best treatment. A preoccupation. So the second criteria is a preoccupation with fantasies of unlimited success, power, and beauty. So as a clinician, I often ask people their internal world, and so I people will start telling me about their fantasies, how they think about things, and a narcissist will have fantasies all the time. They want to be admired. They want to be like, oh, I'm going to become the CEO, or all these people will love me, or there's going to be one day, like at the end of my life, there's going to be a banquet in my honor for everything that I've done. Like, and they will
Yeah.
have these, and they'll all be unique. They're going to be very specific, but you can see this fantasy life is very active, and it's about their admiration. They need to be loved. The third criteria is believing they are special and can only associate with high status people. So what we'll see is that their personality will always drive them to create social dynamics where they will be with high status people, however that may be defined by them. So this could be high status, like they need to be in the upper echelon of, or like, they want to make it into the sports world and be rubbing elbows with the pro athletes and general managers of sports teams. It could also mean that in the local neighborhood, they're the queen bee and they run the show and like they're the high status of this neighborhood. So that's something really important to acknowledge is that high status is going to be by how they define it. And also this idea that they're special is, in my experience, I've never seen someone come out and like just be like, "Oh, I'm special. I'm better than everyone." But it's the way that they behave, the way they interact. It's like they do feel like when you're around them, you get this sense of like they do think that they are better than others and that they deserve special treatment, or that they want, or that there's this deep belief like I'm unique and different than everyone else in a good way.
Yeah. To put it
Like
in like colloquial terms, I would just say they have a God complex.
they do.
Yeah.
And it's like those statements, like I remember in elementary school, like those statements like you're unique and special. And sometimes like we like now, like now that I'm in this profession, I'm like, what a like for someone who is like budding and they're hearing these messages, it's like, oh yeah, even my teachers throughout
Mhm.
like saw me as different and I was always special. Um, the next criteria is requiring excessive admiration. So as you can see, a lot of these are really connected to each other. But this is one where they're going to create relational dynamics to be admired. And they will also change dynamics to be admired. So to give an example of this, I was meeting my first session with a new client, and I am changing a lot of identifying information to make sure that confidentiality is met. But this individual, as I was going through my standard intake process, which is a lot of questions and learning about someone's life, stopped me and told me that they were uncomfortable with how the dynamic was going and they took over. Like I saw them take over a therapy session and direct it in the way, and the session ended with us really admiring how wonderful this person has been to be able to get through how much they've gone through in life. And I think that shows how they are able to get that excessive admiration is take it they can take a conversation, twist it, and then somehow move it over here where we're admiring them.
Yeah.
The next criteria is the sense of entitlement. And that story actually like reflects that. Like this individual had this entitlement of, this is my session. Like I'm paying for this. So I'm going to come in, even though you're the professional and you're doing what is standard good practice. I am going to come in and I'm going to impose my will. I'm going to impose my needs in what I'm needing this to be. And this can manifest a lot of different ways. And what's hard about this when I talk to my students is, are we seeing it properly? Like, what does entitlement look like? We all have our own definition of it. And really understanding that this entitlement is, they are going to go back to what their pathology is about, which is admiration, being special. So their entitlement is about like, I deserve that red carpet rollout, or I get I get to get into the club by the side interest that only VIPs do because I'm entitled to that because of
Mm-hmm.
who I am. So it's not because they've done anything, it's rather because of who I am and I'm so great and I'm admired that
Yeah.
I'm also believing I get this entitlement.
Humility is not one of their virtues.
No. Or if it is, or if they're going to use humility, it's going to be for the purpose of being admired.
Yes. Or for like a manipulation tactic
Yeah.
too, like a pity party, like, oh, yeah. Anyways, we can get into that, but okay.
So
Great.
the next criteria is one that is important, is lacking empathy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this doesn't this is really important because like when I do couples therapy and they're having a fight, it is actually normal for us sometimes to, like, in the middle of a fight, not be empathetic. Like we're kind of like trying to win or have our point heard or whatever that may be. But what happens is, there's this, I want to work through it, I want to see your perspective. This lack of empathy is, they don't have the ability to feel other people's emotions, to get in another person's perspective, because it matches to what this pathology is about, which is it's like there's this joke in the show Frasier where
Mm-hmm.
his brother talks about how he wrote a paper on a narcissistic opera singer and he titled it me 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 me. And it's a joke, but it actually mirrors this because it is all about them. Empathy requires us to be about another person, to see something from another perspective, which the personality won't allow them to do that. They lack it. They aren't able to give it. So we have three more criteria.
Mm-hmm.
So this being the seventh, being envious of others or believing others are envious of them. So we see that envy is a really prominent theme here because they they have this awareness. So if we go back to that like high status one, they're going to have envious. I would not be surprised if at that one and envy are there, because if they don't feel they're at the top of this social hierarchy, they're going to be envious of the people up there, and it's going to drive them crazy. They're going, I need to move that direction, or I need to make changes. And at the same time, they're gonna love looking down from their lofty tower and look at all of the little people who aren't them, and they're like, oh yeah, everyone would love to be me. So we can, like, that dynamic where they're gonna, if they haven't quite ascended to where they want to be, they're going to be envious, but they're also going to think that other people want to be them. Like, yeah, I am gorgeous, or I have so much more talent or skill than other people. And it will, and if you think about those thoughts, how that continues to perpetuate that personality, like it just kind of feeds over and over. Our eighth criteria is showing arrogant behaviors or attitudes. So this is, I think, really important to differentiate from, like, if someone is really skilled at something, because I do believe that we should have pride in what we do. And if I think about the basketball player LeBron James. For him to say, I'm a really good basketball player, we wouldn't be like, oh, he's a narcissist, look at those arrogant behaviors and attitudes. It's actually a statement of truth, because he has worked so hard his entire life to become who he is. This is really what we're seeing here is that this is someone who's just arrogant all the time, and it's not rooted in reality. It's just kind of this like, I'm better than everyone around me at everything I do, and it's not connected to a skill that's like you can see that they've worked hard at or in the truth of what's going on. And it is damaging to relationships. Like when LeBron says, I'm a really good basketball player, that doesn't damage his relationships. A narcissist's arrogant behaviors and attitudes is damaging. Like it gets in the way of intimacy or deepening or all those things.
Mm-hmm.
The last one, it's kind of lengthy, so bear with me as I read it. Is explain that not everyone who shows one or two of these traits is a narcissist, but these characteristics have become problematic when they consistently appear in their behaviors and affect relationships. So, what this last one is getting at is, and this is really common in the DSM, is like at the very end of one, it's like, we don't perfectly have this all figured out, and they can kind of intermingle, or there can be these gray areas, which is why it's really important that if you believe there's a narcissist in your life and you're going to see a professional, that you have someone that has some insight and background into this more than just their class that they had in their master's program or in their doctorate program. Because I will tell you, I trained them. There are so many disorders that we are covering that they maybe get 20 to 30 minutes on this disorder and that's it for their training. And then maybe some in supervision if it's relevant. Finding people who are like, I work with this, are people who have like dedicated time and money to really understand, take extra classes. So that's from a clinical standpoint. If you're going to see a professional, don't just think all therapists, psychologists are the same. Find someone who says, I know what I'm looking for. I know what to do with these gray areas, and I can properly see this clearly. So just a little bit of advice there.
Yeah, I agree with that. Just speaking from experience, yes, that's a very good point. If someone doesn't know how to deal with it, it can actually be very damaging to go to couples therapy with someone who has NPD and the therapist doesn't realize how to deal with that person. It can lead to a lot of secondary abuse for the victim. Again, another topic, but this is really helpful to understand from the DSM-5 perspective what NPD, so narcissistic personality disorder, actually is. Is there anything else that we want to add to this that we may have missed?
I think with all personality disorders, like when I teach my students, I talk about them being on a spectrum. And just because someone may not meet the criteria for narcissistic personality disorder doesn't mean they like you can have narcissistic characteristics and still be damaging. So maybe you're not a full-blown personality disorder, but maybe you're right on the fringes, like you don't quite meet the criteria. And and it's still damaging just because maybe you've had a professional be like, your person, like family member or spouse, like they don't have the personality disorder, and that can be really defeating. They can still have those traits and characteristics that are very damaging to a relationship and to other individuals. So that's just something to hold, is like, it doesn't need the diagnosis, doesn't like, it can help clarify a lot of things, but there are times like where it's like you don't meet criteria, but three of them are really present and they're causing problems. So
Not to mention that the chances of a narcissist actually going and getting a diagnosis are probably slim to none.
yes.
So use your own discretion, but yeah, trust your intuition, right? Like God gave us intuition for a reason. So lean into that. If something feels off, talk to a professional. Maybe Jameson can help as well. So there's always great professionals that can help kind of unpack what you might be experiencing if you have experienced any form of this type of abuse or trauma from these types of individuals. So great. This is very insightful. Thanks for shedding some more light on this, Dr. Natwick. And we're looking forward to getting more of our questions answered. I'm so excited you joined us. Are you ready to take the next step? Head on over to our website, catholicnarcrecovery.com, and join us for weekly community gatherings. We also have some awesome healing resources on there too. Remember, God loves you and God is in control, not the narcissist. God bless.